People think losing your home happens all at once. They're wrong. It begins with little moments you don't recognize until it's too late. A missed phone call. A conversation that feels rushed. A smile that doesn't quite reach someone's eyes. Looking back now, I can see every warning sign. At the time, I only saw my son. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I'm 72 years old. For 43 years, I taught third grade at Maple Ridge Elementary just outside Boston. Children have a way of reminding you that kindness matters more than being right. Maybe that's why I spent my whole life believing kindness could fix almost anything, including family. After my husband Richard passed away 7 years ago, the house became quieter than I ever imagined. His coffee mug stayed in the cabinet. His gardening gloves still hung in the garage. Sometimes I'd hear the old floorboards creak and catch myself expecting him to walk into the kitchen asking if I'd seen his reading glasses. Grief doesn't disappear. It simply learns to whisper instead of scream. Daniel visited almost every Sunday. Or at least he used to. He'd pull into the driveway in his shiny black SUV, hug me quickly, kiss my cheek, and answer 3 phone calls before sitting down for lunch. He always apologized. "Real estate never sleeps, Mom." I'd smile. "I suppose houses need attention." He'd laugh. "You have no idea." I was proud of him. He'd built a successful career buying and renovating homes. At least that's what I believed. One Sunday he walked through the front door with Melissa carrying expensive pastries from a bakery downtown. "They're your favorite," she said. "They didn't have to do that." Daniel grinned. "You deserve nice things." That sentence stayed with me. Not because it sounded sweet. Because it sounded rehearsed. Lunch felt different. Melissa barely touched her food. Daniel kept looking around the dining room. His eyes lingered on the fireplace Richard built with his own hands. The original hardwood floors. The antique staircase. The backyard through the kitchen window. At first I thought he was remembering his childhood. Now I know he was calculating square footage. After dessert he cleared his throat. "Mom, have you ever thought about estate planning?" I chuckled. "I'm 72, Daniel." "Of course I have. It's important. I already have a will." "This is different." He pulled out a leather folder. Professional. Organized. Neat. "I've been talking with financial advisors. I don't need anything complicated." "You do if you want to avoid taxes." Taxes. Lawyers. Probate. Those words made my head hurt. He knew that. "I've handled everything." He slid several papers across the dining table. "You just sign where I've highlighted." I looked down. The language was dense. Legal. Tiny print covering every page. "What exactly am I signing?" He smiled patiently. "It simply protects the house if something ever happens." Melissa finally spoke. "It's standard." I trusted them. Why wouldn't I? I changed Daniel's diapers. Held his hand on the first day of kindergarten. Sat through every baseball game. Stayed awake when he had pneumonia. You don't expect your own child to become someone you need protection from. Still. Something inside me hesitated. I'd like Benjamin to look these over. Daniel's smile disappeared for just a second. "Our family attorney?" he asked. "Yes." His voice hardened. "Mom, Benjamin charges hundreds of dollars an hour." "I don't mind." "That's a waste of money." "Money." He said it so quickly. So naturally. As though it mattered more than certainty. Melissa reached across the table. "Eleanor, Daniel already paid professionals to prepare everything." Paid. Prepared. Ready. The room suddenly felt smaller. "I'll think about it." Daniel sighed loudly. "You don't trust me?" The question landed exactly where he intended. Because it wasn't about paperwork anymore. It was about whether I believed in my own son. I looked into his eyes. For just a second. I couldn't recognize the little boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard. But then he smiled again. And I convinced myself I'd imagined it. I trust you. He handed me the pen. My signature took less than 10 seconds. It would cost me almost everything. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel called more often than he had in years. He sounded cheerful. Almost relieved. Then, suddenly, he stopped calling altogether. 3 weeks later, he asked me to come over for dinner. Something told me my life was about to change. I just didn't know how much. Something told me my life was about to change. I just didn't know how much. When I arrived at Daniel's house that Friday evening, everything felt staged. Melissa greeted me with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The dining table was beautifully set, but no one seemed interested in eating. Daniel kept checking his phone. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you." His voice was calm, almost businesslike. "The paperwork went through." I smiled politely. "That's good, I suppose." He took a slow breath. "I've already listed your house." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. "My house?" "The market is incredible right now. We accepted an offer yesterday." I stared at him. "What do you mean, accepted an offer?" "The buyers close in 30 days. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. "I never agreed to sell my home." Daniel looked almost annoyed. "You signed the transfer." "The estate papers?" "They weren't estate papers." My heart seemed to stop. "You transferred ownership to me." The room fell silent. I searched his face, hoping this was some terrible joke. Instead, I found impatience. "You tricked me." "I didn't trick you, Mom. You told me they protected the house." "They did." His answer was so cold that it hurt more than the truth itself. "They protected it from taxes." "You lied." He rubbed his forehead. "I did what was necessary." "For what?" He hesitated only a second. "For our future." "Our?" "The investment opportunity is once in a lifetime." Melissa finally spoke. "We're buying a luxury waterfront development." Daniel nodded enthusiastically. "If this deal works, we'll triple our money." I looked at my son. Not the successful businessman. Not the little boy who once cried when he accidentally stepped on a butterfly. I was looking at a stranger. "And where am I supposed to live?" "You can stay with us for a while." "For a while?" "Or maybe an assisted living community." Those words pierced deeper than anything else. Assisted living. As though I were another problem to organize. Another asset to relocate. I slowly stood. "I think I should go." Daniel frowned. "Don't make this emotional." I almost laughed. Emotional. As if a lifetime of memories could be measured on a spreadsheet. I walked to my car without another word. I didn't cry until I reached the end of the street. The maple tree Richard planted when Daniel turned 5 disappeared in my rearview mirror. I whispered goodbye. Not to the house. To the life I thought I still had. Grace answered the door before I even knocked. One look at my face was enough. She wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time since Richard died, I allowed myself to completely fall apart. Over the next few weeks, I moved into Grace's small guest room. It wasn't home. But it was safe. Benjamin Carter called me the following Monday. "Eleanor, I'd like to ask a few questions about those documents." His tone was unusually serious. I explained everything exactly as it had happened. Every conversation. Every promise. Every signature. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said something I never expected. "Eleanor." I don't believe you gave informed consent. What does that mean? It means your son may have obtained that transfer through misrepresentation. I closed my eyes. I never wanted to sue my own child. You may not have to. He paused. There's something else. The property records show your husband added a survivorship clause years ago along with a family protection provision. I don't understand. It requires both transparent disclosure and independent legal advice before ownership can be permanently transferred to an immediate family member. Richard. Even after all these years. He had still been protecting me. Benjamin continued. The sale can be challenged. I felt no joy. Only sadness. I never wanted Daniel to lose. I simply wished he had never betrayed me. Meanwhile, Daniel's investment moved forward. He borrowed heavily against the expected proceeds from the house. He convinced private investors. Signed construction contracts. Purchased expensive equipment. Then everything unraveled. Environmental permits were denied. The waterfront project was suspended indefinitely. His financing collapsed. Investors demanded repayment. Within weeks, lawsuits began arriving. The buyers of my house withdrew after learning the ownership transfer was under legal review. The sale fell apart. Daniel now owed millions. And he no longer owned the future he had gambled everything on. 3 months later, Benjamin called again. The court approved a settlement. The transfer would be cancelled. Ownership of my home returned to me. No lengthy trial. No public humiliation. Only justice. I drove back to the house a week later. The porch looked exactly the same. The maple tree still stretched proudly across the yard. Only one thing had changed. Daniel was sitting on the front steps. He looked 10 years older. His expensive suit was gone. So was the luxury SUV. When he saw me, he stood slowly. I'm sorry. Those 2 words hung in the quiet afternoon. I searched his face. This time I didn't see confidence. I saw exhaustion. Regret. Shame. I thought success meant having more, he said softly. I kept telling myself I was doing it for everyone. His voice cracked. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people. Tears filled his eyes. I only saw numbers. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then he whispered the question every child hopes still has an answer. Can you ever forgive me? I looked toward Richard's maple tree. It had survived storms, harsh winters, and decades of changing seasons. Not because it avoided hardship. Because its roots ran deep. I forgive you. He broke down completely. But forgiveness, I continued gently, doesn't erase consequences. He nodded. I know. You'll have to rebuild your life. I will. And you'll have to earn trust. I understand. Then, for the first time in years, he hugged me without looking at his phone. Without checking the time. Without thinking about money. Just a son holding his mother. Daniel eventually declared bankruptcy. He took a modest job managing properties instead of chasing million-dollar deals. It wasn't glamorous. But it was honest. He visited every Sunday again. Not because he needed something. Because he wanted to be there. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch with 2 cups of coffee, saying very little. Those became my favorite conversations. People often ask whether justice feels satisfying. The truth is, justice isn't about watching someone fall. It's about giving them the chance to stand back up the right way. I never got richer. I never wanted revenge. I simply got my home back. And, slowly, I got my son back too. The house still stands beneath the old maple tree. Its walls hold birthdays, laughter, tears, and forgiveness. If these rooms could speak, they wouldn't tell you a story about inheritance. They'd tell you that love is the only legacy worth leaving. Because money can buy a house. But only love can make it a home.